If you lived anywhere within 3 streets of Naka and Ino's home, you already knew their love story was a full-time Nollywood series without closing credits. Naka was tall, always walking fast, speaking faster, and somehow still finding time to throw in hand gestures for extra emphasis. Ino, on the other hand, had the patience of a cat watching a lizard come on the outside, but if you knew her well, you knew she could pounce when pushed too far. The two had been together for 5 years. And in those years, they had broken up so many times that the neighbors started calling them Season 1, Season 2, Season 3. Every breakup came with dramatic speeches, tears, blocked phone numbers, and then, like magic, they would be back together the next week, holding hands in the market as if nothing had happened. When they finally announced their wedding, the whole neighborhood reacted like they'd heard a plot twist in their favorite TV show. Some were happy, some were shocked, and a few whispered, "Let's see if this one will last." But Naka and Ino were determined to prove everyone wrong. They sent out invitations printed on shiny gold paper, hired the biggest catering company in the area, and booked the grandest hall in town. From the beginning, Ino had one condition: the wedding had to be perfect. "Naka, this is not just our day, it's the day people will talk about for years," she said one evening, carefully flipping through a wedding magazine. Naka nodded, not because he fully agreed, but because he had learned that sometimes the best way to keep peace was just to nod. Weeks before the wedding, they argued over everything: the color of the tablecloths, the number of bridesmaids, even the shape of the cake. Ino wanted a 5-tier masterpiece with edible gold dust. Naka thought 2 tiers were more than enough. They compromised at 4 tiers, but only after 3 hours of heated discussion and a brief silent treatment phase. When the day finally came, the hall looked like something out of a royal dream. Golden drapes fell from the ceiling, white roses lined the walkway, and the aroma of pepper soup and jollof rice floated in the air. Guests arrived in their best clothes, some more interested in the food than the vows. Everything seemed fine, until the couple made their grand entrance. Naka, feeling like the king of the world, decided to dance in a way that could only be described as overly enthusiastic. He twirled, he kicked, he even tried a spin that nearly sent him into the cake table. The crowd cheered, until his shoe flew off mid-spin and landed directly in the punch bowl. Gasps, laughter, and a few, "Ah, God forbid," filled the room. Ino froze, her perfect bridal smile cracking for just a second. She whispered through clenched teeth, "Behave yourself," but it was too late. The incident was already the talk of the wedding. The day of the wedding finally arrived. By dawn, the entire neighborhood was buzzing with excitement. Drummers had already gathered outside, beating rhythms so loud that birds fled the trees. The air was thick with the smell of fried plantains, roasted goat, and perfumes that clung to guests like invisible cloaks. Na emerged first, dressed in a gown so elaborate it looked like a walking chandelier. Silver sequins caught the morning sun and bounced light into everyone's eyes. Ino followed in a white agbada that shimmered like freshly polished marble. But he couldn't stop fidgeting, adjusting his collar, wiping imaginary sweat, and looking at his watch every 5 seconds. The guest list, which was supposed to be family and close friends only, had somehow grown into an army of curious villagers, distant relatives, and people who had no clue who the couple was but came for the free food. By mid-morning, the compound looked like a political rally. At first, everything seemed normal until Na spotted something that froze her smile. Sitting in the second row was Ino's ex, dressed in a fiery red dress that could set the curtains ablaze. She was laughing a little too loudly and glancing at Ino like she had a secret to tell. Na's eyes narrowed. She leaned over to her maid of honor and whispered something that made the woman's jaw drop. Moments later, the maid of honor was marching toward the ex with the determination of a general storming enemy territory. The music played, the pastor began the vows, and just when Ino was about to say "I do," Na interrupted. "Wait, before we continue, I have something to address." Gasps echoed across the compound. The pastor tried to shush her, but Na stepped forward, eyes blazing. She pointed at the ex. "What is she doing here? Who invited her?" The ex raised her eyebrows, pretending innocence. "I came to wish you well." "Oh, you came to wish me well wearing that dress," Na snapped. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some guests were leaning forward like they were watching a Nollywood climax scene. Ino, sweating more now, tried to calm his bride. "Na, please, let's talk about this later." "No," Na said, her voice rising. "We'll talk about it now. or "There will be no wedding." The drummers, unsure what to do, slowed their beat to a nervous tap-tap. Children stopped chewing their meat pies. Even the goats, tied in the backyard, went silent, as if they knew history was being made. Before the pastor could regain control, Na stormed off toward the reception area, dragging the hem of her glittering gown like a queen going into battle. The crowd followed, half concerned, half eager for more drama. The wedding had just shifted from a celebration to a public showdown, and everyone knew things were about to get even messier. The whispers about Na and Ino's wedding had already turned into a full-blown neighborhood sport. Every auntie at the market and every barber at the corner shop had their own prediction about what chaos would unfold, but no one could have guessed just how far the madness would go. On the day of the wedding, the church was decorated with so many artificial flowers that it looked like a fabric shop had exploded. Ino walked in wearing a gown so heavily beaded it clinked like a bag of coins with every step. Na, meanwhile, strutted down the aisle in a white suit and sunglasses, indoors, at noon, as if he was starring in his own music video. The priest had barely begun the vows when interrupted. Wait, before we continue, I have something to say." He turned to the guests, grinning. "I just want everyone to know that this wedding is not on credit. Every bottle of wine you'll drink today is fully paid for." The guests laughed nervously. Then came the food service, or rather, the lack of it. The caterers arrived late, carrying trays as if they were delivering to a single-room apartment. Not a wedding of over 300 people. The first table was served lavishly, jollof rice, fried plantains, goat meat piled high. But by the time they reached the 10th table, the plates were nearly empty. Guests began to murmur, their eyes darting between their untouched bellies and the head table where Na and Ino were eating without a care in the world. Things took a sharp turn when a group of young men, clearly not invited, stormed in and headed straight for the food. Na stood up, slammed his glass on the table, and shouted, "Security!" Except there was no security. The bouncers were just two cousins in oversized shirts who stood by the entrance pretending to check invitations. The uninvited guests simply ignored them. Amid the commotion, Ino decided it was the perfect time for a wardrobe change. She disappeared for nearly an hour, leaving Na to fend off guests who were now demanding to know why there was only one cooler of rice left. When she finally returned, she was wearing a bright red gown with a slit so high it nearly started at her waist. The crowd gasped, but she twirled like she was auditioning for a beauty pageant. Just when everyone thought it couldn't get worse, the generator died. The hall plunged into darkness, and the DJ's music screeched to a halt. Na, unfazed, pulled out a megaphone from under the table and began singing loudly to keep the party going. Some guests joined in, others took the opportunity to quietly slip out, muttering under their breath about the wedding of the decade, for all the wrong reasons. The chaos was far from over. What happened next would be talked about for years, cementing Na and Eno's wedding as a legendary cautionary tale in the neighborhood. The murmurs grew louder. Guests began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, whispering to one another. Auntie Moronike fanned herself dramatically, muttering that she had never seen such a disgrace in all her years of attending weddings. The children were restless now, tugging at their mother's wrappers and asking when the food would come. Some of the elderly guests shook their heads, already predicting that the marriage would be as strange as its beginning. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Naka and Ino emerged. But instead of apologizing for the delay, they entered like royalty on Parideno, strutting in a white gown with feathers at the hem, Naka in a sparkling cremagbata with sunglasses on, as though they were stepping onto a movie set. Behind them, instead of bridesmaids or groomsmen, came a small group of dancers dressed in matching gold and red outfits, tossing flower petals onto the ground with exaggerated flair. The MC jumped back on stage, voice booming over the microphone, trying to reignite the energy. "Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our newlyweds," he bellowed. Some guests clapped politely, others just stared, still waiting for the explanation of why they had been kept under the scorching sun for so long. Then, just as the ceremony was about to continue, the couple announced something unexpected. "Before we proceed," Naka said, into the microphone, "we have prepared a special performance for you all." Without warning, they both launched into a choreographed dance routine, complete with spins, dips, and dramatic hand gestures. The crowd was stunned. A few of Naka's friends cheered and whistled, but most guests sat frozen. watching in disbelief as the supposed solemn wedding ceremony turned into a talent show. At one point, Ino even pulled a bewildered uncle from the crowd to dance with her, nearly toppling his cap in the process. By the time they were done, sweat glistened on their foreheads, and the guests were no closer to eating than they had been an hour earlier. The caterers still stood by, food untouched, waiting for the signal to serve. But instead of giving it, Naka insisted on taking creative wedding portraits around the venue. The guests were told to wait again. Patience was wearing thin. The sun dipped lower, and some guests began slipping away quietly. By the time food was finally served, rice slightly cold, meat portions noticeably smaller half, the chairs and the canopy were empty. The couple didn't seem to notice. They were too busy posing for one more selfie, convinced they had thrown the wedding of the century. But in the weeks that followed, what people remembered was not the glamour or the feathers. They remembered the unbearable weight, the strange performances, and the way the couple seemed to forget their guests entirely. And as the whispers grew in the neighborhood, it became clear Naka and Ino's wedding would be remembered, but not for the reasons they had hoped.